Thank you all so much for joining. My name is Candace Agahan, and I am the Director of Community Engagement at the Architecture Foundation of Oregon. And we are just so excited to have this time today to celebrate our 2026 PAE Scholar, Brooklynn Roth. And you'll have the opportunity today to hear directly from Brooklynn about a project she is working on. But before we get to that, I'll just share a little bit more about AFO and our scholarship program and all of our opportunities for college students, and then I'll hand it to Ben and Sandy at PAE, who will share more about this specific scholarship and our partnership over the years. And so I just wanted to start by thanking Brooklynn for taking the time to be here today, and also thanking Ben and Sandy and PAE for this partnership and for making this whole scholarship possible. Also wanted to give a shout out to our PAE selection committee. I know some of you are on this call, but they really did the hard work of reading through this year's many applications and selected Brooklynn. And just so you all know, this is only the second year of awarding the PAE Diversity in Engineering Scholarship. It's still really new. And we even have our inaugural scholar here with us today. That's Morgan, who is currently doing an internship at the Portland PAE office, which is just so cool. So shout out to Morgan. And yeah, if you were at our last year meet and greet, you met her there. So just to share a little bit more about AFO, our mission is to educate and inspire Oregonians of all ages and backgrounds to engage in the design of our built environment. And we really believe that Oregon is stronger when more people from diverse backgrounds participate in designing and building our communities. And one of the ways that we do this and support those ideas is through our programming for higher education students and specifically our scholarships program. But in addition to our scholarships, we offer many other opportunities for students to get involved, including a free student membership, specifically for college students, but this grants them access to a ton of networking and design events that we host throughout the year and really connects them with professionals in the industry, just like all of you. And we also have our Oregon Student Opportunities Hub, which is a website resource with many links to different design programs and opportunities across the state. So this includes more scholarships for students, mentorships, internships, a bunch of programs. And this is actually for students kindergarten through post-secondary. So if you are a parent or have kids in your life or know other students who are interested in exploring design, please lead them to our Oregon Student Opportunities Hub. We also have our formation mentorship program, which supports design students of color, including engineering students. And we pair these design students with design professionals of color for a 6-month one-on-one mentorship. And if you are interested in participating either as a mentor or a mentee, or if you know a student who is eligible, please mark your calendars for September, because that is when our applications for mentors and mentees go live. And the program occurs from January to June of each school year. And then lastly, the last thing I wanted to touch on is all of our volunteer opportunities. So AFO is a small nonprofit, and we very much rely on the participation of volunteers year-round, including many college students and professionals who help us engage youth and Oregon communities through design education. If you know AFO, you're probably super familiar with our Architects in Schools program, but that's a really big way that we engage professionals and college students in volunteerism. So please keep an eye out for our Architects in Schools applications, which will open next month. And then specifically about our scholarships, we are almost at our 30-year anniversary, which is super cool. We've been awarding scholarships since 1998 and have recently experienced a ton of growth in this program, thanks to partners like PAE and Michelle at Carleton Hart Architecture, who introduced herself earlier. But in total, we now offer 6 scholarships ranging from $5,000 to $10,000 with a couple of them being renewable scholarships. So when a student receives them, they're able to receive that funding annually until they graduate. And that includes the PAE scholarship. And most of our scholarships are specialized for people who are underrepresented in design and building fields. So we can really work to create a more diverse design and building industry that really reflects the communities that we're all designing for. And all of our scholarships support students across design and building fields. So that includes engineering students, architecture, construction, interior design, and even other design fields such as graphic design and art, really spanning the wider design field that impacts our everyday environments. And an exciting piece of news is that we awarded $75,000 in scholarships to 11 students this year, which is our highest amount yet. And we're just really excited to be offering this level of support for students pursuing design and building degrees in Oregon and beyond. And yeah, the last piece that I wanted to share is this timeline for students interested in applying to the PAE Diversity and Engineering Scholarship. As I mentioned before, this is just our second year awarding this specific scholarship. So if you know any students who are eligible, please help us spread the word. Our applications always open in November with a February deadline. And then we announce the scholar in June and have a celebration just like this one during the summer months, typically in July. So please keep those dates in mind and help us spread the word to students that you know. And yeah, that's it for me. So now I will hand it over to Ben and Sandy to talk a bit more about our partnership with PAE and the specific scholarship. So Sandy, take it away.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Candace. Thank you, everyone who's taking time during lunch to join us for our celebration of Brooklyn and getting to know her a little bit better. For those of you who aren't familiar with PAE, we were founded in Portland, Oregon in 1967, so we're just about to celebrate our 60th anniversary next year, and we have now grown into a national engineering and design firm with, as you can see here, a dozen offices across the country. Our work also spans the country too. We specialize in mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineering, architectural lighting design through our Luma and regenerative design consulting. And right now we employ 450 people and growing. We have 55 open job requisitions if you know somebody who is interested in working at PAE. I'm joining you from the PAE Living Building here in Portland, Oregon. It is the first developer-led commercial living building. And if you're not familiar with a living building standard, it is the most rigorous standard in high performance design, even higher than LEED Platinum. We have been believing in engineering that matters for a long time. For us, that means we're combining technical rigor, inspired design, and innovation and sustainability to create a built environment with clean air, clean water, and clean energy for all. That's our mission and vision. And so the commitment extends beyond the projects that we design. We're deeply committed to creating both positive social and environmental impact. And so we're proud to be incorporated as an Oregon benefit company. We're independently certified as a B Corp, and we are recognized with the JUST label for our commitment to equity, transparency, and employee well-being. Together, these reflect our triple bottom line philosophy of people, planet, and profit, and truly guide how we work with our clients, our communities, and each other. This year, I am the new sponsor for our JEDI committee, who was the first, what created this partnership that led to the diversity scholarship. We see this as a natural extension of our triple bottom line values. We, as AFO, believe that the future of engineering depends on creating opportunities for talented students from all backgrounds. And I'm really excited to celebrate Brooklyn. It was, as a newbie, it was really, it was a real inspiring process to watch our team work through the applications. And so I'm going to pass it over to Ben, who's going to talk to a little bit more about where this gets started and kind of what our inspiration was and what our bigger aspirations are for the Diversity in Engineering Scholarship here at PAE.
Yeah, thank you, Sandy. So, yeah, in short, our scholarship is really kind of an extension of our student outreach and mentorship programs. We're dedicated to supporting the next generation of engineers and promoting diversity within that next generation. And so part of that is student outreach, mentorship, um, providing support so that people are in the pipeline to be part of that next generation. So I don't need to read all the words on the page. I think this description's in here, but that is ultimately our goal, is to increase diversity and inclusion in our industry. And so with that, I'll introduce Brooklynn just real quickly. So Brooklynn is a civil engineering student at George Fox University. And Brooklynn, I believe you have a presentation for us on what you've been working on there.
Yeah, so let me share my screen real quick. Yeah, so if there's one thing people know about me, is that I like trains a lot. I also like planes and racing and boats and farm equipment and biking and recently, weirdly enough, baseball, which, as a slight tangent, this is the rendering for the proposed Portland Stadium down by the South Waterfront. And as a train nerd, I couldn't help but notice, what is that? And why is that there? And why are there two of them? Of course, this is a Japanese style commuter train, and I don't know what it's doing on streetcar tracks. But anyway, it's a little bit out of place. Portland used to have a really good train network. This is a streetcar running in Portland in the 1920s. You can tell it's Portland because even in the black and white picture, you can tell it's rainy and nasty. But being a history nerd, I know that we used to have a really good network. This is the Portland that we all know and love, and this was the network in the 1920s. Now, you'd think we probably would have kept this network, expanded it, made it better, right? Well, let's see what we have 100 years later, and oh, that's not gone well. So, me being me, I can't let the 1920s have better urbanism than a century later. So, I've gone to work on Google Earth and made this so far because I'm still working on this constantly. It's my passion project. So here's a quick look at Portland just to get a better idea of what it was like in the 1920s. We still have a lot of the trunk routes, but we've lost a lot of the spider webbing. And again, we're not done here. So, but there's a network that I've been working on. So we see there's plenty of room for improvement. And I only have so much time, so I can't go through everything that needs to happen for this. But here's a lightning round of things that I don't have time for, but want to talk about, like funding for transit and how it's a service, not a business. How the transit mall has so much more development if they actually made it better, and how we can keep the cars out of the bus lanes because they never seem to do that. How the branding we have is important, and how these sector logos were actually a really good idea. About the importance of integrated transport, about clock face scheduling, and integrated transport modes as well, about the importance of land use and things like a land value tax, about how bike infrastructure can supercharge transit use, about how hydrogen buses aren't as green as we think they are and are probably a bad idea, and so much more. But we do need to talk about how to make Portland's transit work. And I think in order to get there, we have to look at why it doesn't work. And I think there's a couple main ways that this manifests. First of all, we've taken the cheapest approach to where we put our transit, and that's oftentimes next to freeways, like here on the Banfield or on the Green Line there. Um, and this is a problem because of catchment zones. Catchment zones are the area around a station where people want to walk, bike to the station. It's the area closest to the station. It's some of the most valuable land around the transit station. And when you put the train next to the freeway, half of your catchment zone at minimum is blocked off, and it basically halves the utility of your transit. It also just makes it not a great place to wait for the train because you're right next to a freeway, and freeways are loud, which makes Park Row Station on the Red Line the worst station on the entire network because it's in the middle of a freeway. So, yeah, and here is a quick map. The red is sections of the MAX system that are near freeways. And you can see on the east side, there's a ton of it. So we have built out a network that may have been cheap to build, but it may not have been good. It may not have been useful transit. Problem number 2 is that land use around the stations hasn't meaningfully changed in the 20 odd years we've had transit. You can see these stations here, they don't look any different from if there was not a station there. You can't tell that there's a station there just by the land use. There are some places where this has changed, Orenco Station being the notable exception. But for the most part, such as here at Clackamas Town Center, there's still just seas of parking surrounding our transit when it really should be the densest housing in the city. And we are also missing the necessary reforms to get this stuff built quickly to help solve the housing crisis. We also haven't made the necessary encouragements, such as a land use tax or land value tax, to get this development rolling. And without it, we're not going to be able to change the way people live, to tackle climate change, to tackle the social inequalities in our society, the problems that we face that transit can be so powerful in tackling. Japanese railways, as an example, they're profitable not because they run trains, but because they take their train stations and basically put giant malls on top of them, and they make rent off of those malls, and that's how they make money, is through the upgraded land value of the train. Chicago recently passed a bill that is going to make their transit also a land development. It's so early on that we just have to wait and see if that's going to be successful, but I will be watching with hope. Problem number 3 is that our railways will pay $100 and make a really bad alignment to avoid paying $105 and redoing some car infrastructure in order to make a better alignment. You can see it here at Gateway, where they built a giant bridge over the freeways. On the Green Line, they built giant freeways over various car infrastructure. On the Orange Line, there's this particularly bad section where the Orange Line kinks and then kinks again outside of a station. I did the math. It adds an entire minute to the trip, those curves alone, as opposed to redoing that interchange and having the train just go straight. And then there's some particularly bad examples, such as here on the Green Line with an absolutely massive bridge, as opposed to just redoing the interchange to make room for the train. And unfortunately, if we look at the Southwest Light Rail program, which is the one that they proposed in 2020, it got voted down. They're still doing most of the same things. We have massive bridges and we have really tight turns. So we're just making extensions that are more expensive than they need to be in some cases, but also they try to avoid difficult situations by taking really sharp turns. Just because your vehicles can take sharp turns doesn't mean you should. Problem number 3 indirectly causes problem number 4, which is that transit is slower than driving. And it's a simple fact that, yeah, if you're 7 minutes slower, it's probably fine. You don't have to be perfectly all the time faster than driving. But I mean, if we're talking about 17 minutes versus 51 minutes, it's no wonder nobody's going to take the train, or certainly not as many people as they should. Also related, problem number 5, stations are too close together, but they're also too far apart. How can this be? That's a contradiction. Well, it's a simple fact that light rail doesn't exist. Light rail is trying to be both a metro and a tram at the same time. This is the Not a Metro sorter from a YouTuber I follow, Gareth Dennis, who's a railway engineer. And if you follow this sorter, the TriMet Max system and the Portland streetcar end up both being trams. So we have a system that's trying to fill both the function of the trams on the right, but also the big trains on the left. And it just ends up doing neither well. You can see this through TriMet closing stations in downtown to try and speed up the trains through there. And we're just constantly fighting an uphill battle, because to go from one end of the blue line to the other takes an hour 44, it takes an hour to drive. If you can't close that gap, you're never going to really get the modal shift you need. You're also never going to get the urban change you need in terms of density, because once you spread out your stations, then you don't have the stations close enough to really justify the density, the overlapping of catchment areas, if you will. So ultimately, light rail is just trams, and trams are just big buses on steel wheels, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. trams are kind of the final evolution of the bus local surface transit, if you will. It goes bus, trolley bus, bendy bus, and then eventually to tram. But that just means you have to use them differently in your transportation system. The role that they fill is that in some cases, if you're doing a short enough trip, it can be quicker to take a tram than it is to take a metro that's underground. You have to go down down to the platform level, catch the metro, and then go back up, and that can take some time. If it's a short enough trip, you might just end up taking the tram because it'll be that much quicker. Regional rail is really good at driving this modal shift because it is so quick. People want to take the train because it's more convenient. This goes back to a world where the rich take trains instead of the poor driving. Yeah. So we've kind of split transit into two different levels. We've got the regional level that connects major centers together and is very fast, but doesn't have it as closely stopped or closely spaced stops. And then we have the local level for more local trips, such as buses, trams, trolley buses, those kinds of things. Both are important. Both are different. So Portland needs to do better. And the plans we have currently just aren't cutting it. Or as my engineering professor would put it, you need to dream bigger, more beautiful dreams, which is where this comes in. This is the network I've created, and I want to show you 3.5 lines that I think kind of show the principles of what we should be doing with our transit. Those are, as advertised, the McMinnville line, the Sandy line, the downtown tunnel network, and then also the Tualatin River and Charbonneau lines, which are really short, but they're also really important for driving modal shift, getting people onto trains and out of their cars. A quick key, the red and blue are for the regional rail. Red is when it's sharing tracks with like freight trains and stuff. Blue is when it has its own tracks. And then yellow is for the trams. The wider the line, the more tracks I've kind of allocated for that particular stretch of track. So with that, let's have a look at the McMinnville line and just take a whistle-stop tour of the various parts of it. We start in downtown McMinnville. I put the station there because it is closest to where the existing density is and would hopefully drive some infill where there's just like random parking lots. We follow the existing rail network, which is in that kind of light white, until we get up here where we've got the railway splits into a broader S-curve just to keep the speeds high. When you're going through and redoing a railway line like this, it's very easy to just follow the existing network, but what you really want to be doing is building a new system kind of in place of the old system, making upgrades, making the track straighter, building a system for the 21st century instead of one built by people in the 18th, 19th, and 20th century. We've got a giant Y here that connects to the line that goes up to Forest Grove. And we continue to not follow the railroad, but make a straighter path when we come into Lafayette with a station also in downtown, which would hopefully, make the downtown there denser. I think these small towns out in the countryside connected by local trains would be a really, they have a lot of potential for making really nice cities, in my opinion. We then move over to Dayton, another small town. I couldn't quite get the train to go through Dayton just with the way everything worked out. So there would probably be a shuttle bus connecting the station or something. Or in this case, I've drawn with the green line, kind of the upgraded cycleway that you would probably put in to connect active transportation to the station there. I also want to show the giant curve that I snuck in here between the existing train line and the river, which just kind of arcs just enough to avoid touching both. And that would allow for, again, high speeds to travel the distances that you get in these exurbs. If we follow the network or the existing rail line through Dundee and Newburgh, where we get to one of the biggest bits of infrastructure on this new line, which is a massive tunnel under these hills. If anyone's driven out of Newburgh, you on 99W, you go up those hills and curves. The railroad does it too, and it's really slow through there. So instead of dealing with those constant switchbacks, we just do a big tunnel under the hills there, avoid the grades, avoid the curves. And that brings us to Sherwood, where we have a little bit of curve straightening there. We do take out a couple single family homes, but when we're concerned about building density, if it's just a small amount of destroying the existing fabric, especially if that fabric is kind of flawed in its car dependency, then that's a kind of a trade-off that I'm willing to take. Though I do try and limit that to mostly industrial areas, which can generally handle the redevelopment of accommodating a rail line through them. We move along towards Tualatin here, where we intersect with more rail lines. That line coming from the bottom is actually the current West commuter rail. So we would be doing a ton of upgrades on that, but that's a separate line. And we've basically followed the existing network, which is only a couple broadening of curves serving Tualatin here. We then hit the really funky interchange, which I've mostly left alone. I'll probably at some point go through and redo it though, because I'm not quite happy with where everything goes. We've got lines to Oswego, to Oregon City, and down to Wilsonville here. So there's going to be a lot of transfers happening, a lot of connections. It's going to be a really important part of the network for just allowing people to get where they need to go. We continue up to Tigard, though, and this is the part of the line where we split from the existing line that the West uses and go into one of my favorite sections, which was used by an old railroad called the Oregon Electric Railroad, which operated like electric streetcars, basically, all the way from Eugene into Portland way back in the 1930s. We curve off from the railroad and we enter the Garden Home section, which is where we follow the old railroad grade through a lot of this. There'd be a lot of opportunity for infill for newer density along this network. And then we follow the one of the roads there. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but it goes into Multnomah there. And then we end up following Barber Boulevard, kind of following the Southwest Light Rail route that they would have taken through one of the actually decent sections. And then as we descend down the hill, we enter the tunnels, which is a good segue to part 2, the downtown subway network. So there's several lines here that kind of try to take the regional trains and let them act as metros in the downtown network, get people between different hotspots, if you will, in a very quick manner. We've got the Union Station Tunnel here, which runs north-south, the Pioneer Square Tunnel, which runs roughly east-west, the Providence Park Tunnel, which also runs east-west, the Nob Hill Tunnel, which runs west-north, and the Brooklyn Tunnel. Next up, lines coming from Oregon City and Milwaukee up to the tunnel network. We have the Vancouver Tunnel, which connects the line up to Vancouver, Washington. The Rose Quarter Tunnel, which provides kind of an outward, provides an additional north-south arterial, which is good for relieving traffic. And I just want to show as well how I kind of developed this network, and that was with triangles. So I kind of picked 3 different points that I thought would be really good for connecting, which was Pioneer Square, Providence Park, and Union Station, and kind of built the tunnel network out from there. And then you're like, well, we probably need some down in South Waterfront, so let's add a new line there, and then the line just evolves from there. As far as actually like building this out, we can start with the existing network, and we can actually build in something that they've been talking about for a while now, which is adding a tunnel to the MAX network to speed the trains up through downtown. But first, we should probably get rid of that Southwest Light Rail, which I just want to show does some really weird stuff down there at the bottom, where it does some really tight turns in there. I don't know why. That's the latest proposal is, yeah, I could rant about Southwest Light Rail all day. But we start by building in a tunnel. We give over the surface tracks that are unused to basically Portland streetcar and let them run local services on that, build some infill stations. And from there, we build another little bypass kink, which is going to allow us to take the existing 2 sections of tunnels and then turn those over to our 2 different tunnels there. And we've effectively continued to provide service through downtown with the MAX system, but we've also now kind of got that transition going to regional rail as well. And then we can upgrade that last line to regional rail. And that's kind of the transition that you would do for this is you would slowly upgrade the line until it's basically regional rail, handing over old sections to the tram network. This Y here is on the tunnel network, which connects up to Sandy Boulevard, which is a good segue into the Sandy Boulevard section. This is the New York Elevated, which is going to become relevant in just a minute. We'll start our tour down here where it leaves the tunnel, kind of goes through, just basically follows the median of Sandy Boulevard. It's going to meet up with the tram network, which is going to also follow this alignment. It's going to provide local service while the regional rail does express. And as far as cross sections go, because talking about street cross sections, this is a pretty common cross section for light rail. You see this on the blue line, on the yellow line, on light rail networks all across North America. You put the light rail in the center, it acts as the median to the road. But I actually don't think this is a good idea. I think it's far better if we put the transit on the outside, because then it's more accessible to people on the sidewalk. You don't have to cross the street necessarily to get to the transit, whereas you always do if it's in the middle. This also has the added bonus that this median in the middle here, if I can Madden this in real quick, you can use that with some construction equipment to then keep your transit service in place. You put the light rail in first, and then you come back through and you build your elevated transit above the roadway network. And once again, you get this seamless transition into the built-out network. We basically just follow Sandy Boulevard with some interchanges with different transit modes, such as the 82nd tram there. And I think that this network, again, this part of the line again, is going to be a really good place for infill development. You've got an existing street grid network. It's a straight shot because Sandy Boulevard cuts across that grid network into downtown. I think that there's a ton of potential here for building density here. And then, of course, we end up here at Park Rose. The last thing I want to talk about are the orbital lines, which are often overlooked on a transit network, but are also like probably the most important in our modern day society in getting people out of their cars and onto trains. Most networks, especially in North America, are hub and spoke. You have lines that connect the downtown here, such as Manhattan. Those get connected via spokes out to the suburbs, mostly meant for commuters, people coming into the financial district for their 9-to-5 job. The problem is that, let's say you live up in Queens and you want to go to a baseball game in Brooklyn after work. Well, now you can't take transit because there's no good connection between these two. That is where the orbitals come in that connect these suburbs to suburbs, which a shocking number of trips actually fall into that basket, such as the project here in Melbourne, where we've got kind of a loop line. These are really important connections, and I want to show you two of them that I think would be really good bang for buck. We'll start here in Oregon City for the first line. Oregon City is a really great downtown that I'm used to have streetcars, and under my plan, it would once again have streetcars as well as regional rail. The problem is that any train coming from here, you basically have to go into downtown to get anywhere else. So we're going to try and fix that. If we zoom out here, we're going to put a bridge over the Willamette River just north of the falls and go through the town of Willamette, served by a basically cut and cover tunnel. I also stuck it through a little gully here, which I hope doesn't have a creek, because if it does, then I have to scrap this bit of railroad and start over again, because water and railroad doesn't mix. We then follow the Tualatin River Valley through here, cross over the freeway, and we end up here in Tualatin. And a similar case exists for the Charbonneau line. We've got places like Molalla and Canby and Woodburn here that are kind of disconnected from places by the rail network to places that a lot of people go, like Wilsonville, Tualatin, Sherwood, and places further north. So this Charbonneau line here, which I will bring up in detail, is really important because it lets you branch off from the existing network, turn north, hit Charbonneau, and take out just the one hole of the golf course, and then end up in Wilsonville and allow trains to go further on, which is the big reason that these orbitals are so important. Is if you have your train sitting there in Oregon City, and let's say it's come from either Milwaukee or from Clackamas, it really only has a place it can go via the red routes. But if we build that orbital, well, now it can go up to Beaverton or to McMinnville on the McMinnville line, and you just create a broader network of connections as opposed to just a hub and spoke, which is, again, a big issue with a lot of North American transit. The same thing exists for the Charbonneau line, where trains off the Balala line can take routes up to Tualatin, Beaverton, Forest Grove, and beyond. And I think that's just a really important bit of transit. And that is all I have for for this project. This is a topic I could easily talk for 6 hours about. So yeah, yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brooklyn. It's so clear that you have so much knowledge about this and have spent a lot of time researching and developing these ideas. I would love to just open it up to the whole group for some Q&A, just open Q&A for the last few minutes that we have. If anyone has any questions, you can either just come off mute and ask them or put them in the chat, whatever is best. Do we have any questions?
Just a tangent. That was great, Brooklyn. Can you go back to the 1920s grid? Just one of my personal favorite pieces of trivia.
Yeah, let me.
Yeah, all the way back.
There's like 125 slides here, I'm going to be honest. Almost, come on.
Getting there.
Here we go.
Yeah, so I just wanted to point out to everyone the line that goes up to Council Crest Park there in the lower left-hand corner. Like, if you've ever like been up in that area, that's pretty wild to think that there was a trolley line going up there. And there used to be a theme park apparently too for a while. Anyway, I'd encourage you to bring that back somehow.
Yeah.
Just because
Yeah. They actually run replicas of the trolley cars that ran the Council Crest. They run it on the Willamette Shore line, basically from South Waterfront on south. So another bit of trivia.
cool.
Yeah, I kind of have something on that historical, like a question, is like when you're thinking about public transportation and some of like you made the point, rail lines, they brought people out here, right? And so there's just the railroads don't want to give up any of their rail lines. So when you think about public transportation, like how do you navigate around kind of these fixed, supply train lines and what's the dynamic there at all in the planning? Do you go around them? Do you try and cooperate? And what's the approach there?
Yeah, that's the constant problem with the freight railroads, is that
Yeah.
they are really only interested in running freight trains.
Yeah.
They're a pain in the backside of anyone who has to deal with them. And in my opinion, we should just nationalize them. We should bring back Conrail. And that was kind of one of the beginning cases, or like one of the background, I guess, facts that I didn't bring up was like, this all assumes that we get back control of our railroads from the freight rail companies and reestablish Conrail, basically. Because a lot of this network you could probably build out without dealing with the major Class 1 railroads, but large portions of it, such as the Oregon City line, the lines going out east towards Troutdale, one of them uses Class 1 railroads. You would lose a core trunk of the network if you had to avoid using the freight lines. So one thing I have considered is dedicated infrastructure can be good for metro lines, but I think we should still nationalize the freight trains.
Yeah. Yeah. What about using I'm thinking about the High Line in New York, where rather than like scrapping what they had from ages ago when the metro system was built, they repurposed it into like, one of the most beautiful urban walking experiences and talk about all the things about getting people out. So, is there opportunity for that in Portland? Like there's just something hidden, like that maybe we can't put public transportation on it, but we could put bikes and
Yeah, there's actually, if I can just kind of back up a couple more slides here, there's this line here, which I'm going to attempt to Madden in. It's a line that runs all the way out to Boring and Estacada. And that is, I forget what the actual name of it is, but it's a biking and running trail now. And that would
I know what
actually,
you're talking about. Yeah, that one.
yeah, the Springwater
Springwater,
Corridor Trail.
yeah.
That's
Springwater
the one.
corridor. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the main example I would think of.
Okay.
Honestly, for a lot of my plans here, a lot of that would actually become rail line again. You would probably keep the trail next to it, but those corridors, linear corridors for transportation, are invaluable, and it bugs me to no end that up until recently, anytime a rail line would shut down, we would just lose that corridor to the it would get split up into private properties.
Yeah.
Honestly, one of the areas I see for making a high line style kind of network, or like parks and stuff and recreation and giving land back to the people, is actually the freeways. Because I think that if we can get enough of like modal shift, there are sections of freeway that I think we could dismantle, such as like I'm going to attempt to, hang on, let me go forward a couple slides. Such as the bit of I-5, which runs from 405 up along to 84. I feel that would just be a slam dunk. Remove that, give people back the riverside, and if you can get enough modal shifts, that way you don't get like terrible gridlock. That would be one of the areas I see as like a huge plus to the community, because we did the same thing on the other side of the river. Let's just do it on the other side.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, really great questions. There's also a few things in the comments, but I just wanted to mention, I know we're out of time here. So if anyone on this call needs to hop off, totally fine. We can probably stay for another 5 minutes or so just to answer some final questions, and whoever needs to get back to work, go ahead and hop off. I think Erica's question was kind of mixed into Sandy's. Erica asked, I'm curious about any challenges that existing railways for Amtrak/cargo trains might present in your work. I feel like, is there anything else you wanted to say about that, or is that kind of all related?
The one thing I would add is that if you run your railway right, you can actually have a lot of intermingling of different transportation services, such as Amtrak and your regional trains, especially if you have enough tracks. It just gets a bit more expensive when you do that, but kind of like more difficult, not necessarily impossible. One thing I did want to talk about is the comment from Naomi here about lack of accessible platforms in Europe, which is actually a huge issue. A lot of European train platforms are really low below the train. One of the, especially in the UK, one of the big pushes lately has been for accessible platforms, where the platform of the train and the platform of the platform are at the same height, so that way you can roll stuff across. And it goes even beyond wheelchair users. It improves your station dwell time because people can get on and off the train quicker. It's good for people regardless of ability, because if you have like children in a stroller, having to get that up over a big gap to the train, that can be a huge issue. And it's definitely something I've thought about, and we would have level platforms for sure. That would be a day one requirement of this program, of this project.
Yeah, I'm going to ask quickly. I imagine part of your 6-hour presentation is the case for this from a just a societal angle. And I'm thinking about this like electrical grid and like transportation load, right? To look at like if you were to able build out the transportation network in trains, like easing up of the freeways, accessibility, cost of commuting, all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Would certainly, start to make the case a little bit better. Because I just, you think about that, and where right now we're looking at tolling the 205 without doing any kind of additional improvements on it just to raise revenue. And the people that are driving on the 205 are the people who have to come to their place of employment every day. And so, taxing people who probably are least able to pay that additional financial burden just to get to work.
Yeah.
I mean, part of your 6 hours probably, hopefully
Yeah.
that, like why is this part of, a social justice kind of proposition?
Hmm. Yeah.
If it's not, I'm a political science major, so like I'm always like trying to think about the policy angle.
Yeah. That's
People
kind of
angle.
the stuff that I love thinking about too, is, how do you use policy to get people to make better choices, Um,
I have one quick question. Could you go back
Yeah.
to the slide on the tax, the property tax? Because I want to look more
Yeah.
into that and I forgot what it's called. But the model of taxing, it looked like the square footage as opposed to what's built on it.
Yeah, it's called Georgism, and it actually, the creator of the game Monopoly created that game to basically be an advocate for Georgism, which is the idea that you tax land based on its value, not what you build on top of it. So if you have a vacant lot, you don't make a ton of money off it just because the value of the land raised. You basically get an incentive to actually do something with the land as opposed to keep it vacant. It can help a lot with the urban fabric and land utility.
And it also opens it up for more dense housing without an increased cost, which you then have to figure out ROI.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome presentations. Thanks
Yeah,
so
so
much.
good.
I learned
Thank
a
you.
lot.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we have one more question in the chat, and then I think we can end with this one from Nancy. Nancy said, thanks for your vision about future transit. Could you please talk about how self-driving cars and other modal shifts could affect transit generally?
So, self-driving cars I honestly see them as a large hindrance to progress. I think, first of all, I don't think we're going to get self-driving cars. I just don't think it's possible with our technology. If anything, it's just going to be kind of the offshoring of transportation services, because what people don't tell you about driverless cars is that a lot of times they have backup drivers driving remotely from places with less expensive labor, like the Philippines. Um, so what I see a lot of these driverless car companies being is outsourcing the labor of taxi drivers, um, of driving basically to places where it's less expensive, but also making transportation a service. The logical evolution of this is that if they lobby enough people, maybe we get more freeways as a result of this that divide communities, and maybe the only way you can get around is by paying these companies your monthly subscription to have a driverless car come pick you up or something. I don't see a future in self-driving cars. But yeah, I feel like the solutions we have already are enough to tackle climate change, and something like a self-driving car is just a distraction and a venture capital sinkhole. So that's all I'll say on that, because that's something I could rant about for 6 hours as well.
You can add that to
Thanks.
the presentation.
Yeah. Yeah. And someone said the Netherlands has accessible trains because of all the bikes. Yes, I lived in the Netherlands for a year, and yeah, it's heaven over there. The way that they do their design of their cities, and the tiny town I was in, about the size of Albany, had a train every 30 minutes, whereas here Albany has a train twice a day. So it's just a different way of thinking about transportation.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I think all of us here can agree if we have a transit related question, we'll be coming to you about it. So if anyone thinks of any additional comments or questions for Brooklyn, feel free to email me, Candace@af-oregon.org, and I'll make sure Brooklyn gets all your comments. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing with us. That was a super compelling presentation. I think we could all have listened to a lot more of it. And yeah, thank you all for joining us today, and hope to see you all again soon.